nervous as hell right now.
The room was full of laughter, cameras flashing, legends of comedy sitting just a few feet away from each other. On the surface, it looked like another celebration of black comedy, a night where the biggest names gathered to honor the culture they helped build. But something strange happened that night, because in the middle of all the jokes,
Nervous as hell right now.
all the applause and all the smiles, one man suddenly looked uncomfortable. That man was Steve Harvey, and the reason, one name, Katt Williams. Now here's the part that made people start whispering. When Dave Chappelle stepped on stage and began talking about Katt Williams, the mood in the room shifted. It wasn't obvious to everyone watching at home, but to the comedians sitting in that crowd, the tension was real. Steve Harvey tried to laugh it off. He joked, he smiled, he even tried to change the topic.
Bernie told me something, I believed it because he never lied to me. He told me that when he got Oceans, Steve called the producers to try to get his role and even wanted to take less.
But if you watch closely, you can see something else: nervousness. And that raised a question that fans and insiders have been asking ever since. Why would a man as powerful as Steve Harvey, a man who built an empire in television, radio, and comedy, feel uneasy when someone mentions Katt Williams? Dave Chappelle seemed to know the answer, and once you start connecting the dots, the story becomes a lot deeper than anyone expected. Because this isn't just about jokes. This is about loyalty, betrayal, and secrets that have been sitting quietly in the comedy world for years.
He stopped stand-up because he got in a comedy battle called the Championship of Stand-Up Comedy with one Katt Williams in Detroit in front of 10,000 people and lost.
To understand why this tension exists, you have to go back to the beginning. Long before the podcasts, the interviews, and the viral clips, black comedy was dominated by a small group of powerful names. Steve Harvey was one of them. In the 1990s and early 2000s, Harvey wasn't just a comedian, he was everywhere. Television shows, stand-up specials, radio stations, books. His image was polished, confident, and powerful. To millions of fans, he was the definition of success.
Bernie told me something, I believed it because he never lied to me. He told me that when he got Oceans, Steve called the producers to try to get his role and even wanted to take less.
A man who started with nothing and built a massive career through talent and determination. But inside the comedy world, things were a little more complicated. Because comedy is a competitive business. Every joke matters, every show matters, and reputation. Reputation is everything. Back then, another group of comedians was rising through the ranks, names like Bernie Mac, Cedric the Entertainer, and later, a fearless performer with wild energy and a sharp tongue, Katt Williams. Katt was different. He didn't follow the usual industry rules. He wasn't interested in playing it safe. His style was raw, unpredictable, and brutally honest. Audiences loved him because he said things other comedians were afraid to say. And when he stepped on stage, he didn't just tell jokes, he attacked.
Why are you on my material?
Right.
You know, what's that about? You know, and then, people want to jump up. Oh, he didn't know, he didn't steal your... So yes, he did.
Not physically, of course, but verbally, comedically, fearlessly. That made him exciting, but it also made him dangerous in the eyes of some people in the industry, because Katt Williams had a reputation for doing something many comedians avoid: calling people out. Sometimes directly, sometimes with jokes that were a little too specific. And according to stories that have circulated in comedy circles for years, one of the most memorable moments happened during a live show in Detroit back in 2008. That night, thousands of people packed the venue. Steve Harvey and Katt Williams were both on the lineup. Two big personalities, two different styles, two comedians with very different reputations. What happened next became something people still talk about quietly to this day. According to multiple accounts from fans and comedians who were there, Katt Williams delivered a performance that completely stole the show. He was electric. The crowd loved every second, and at one point, he started joking about Steve Harvey's famous high-top fade haircut. Now that might sound harmless, but the way Katt delivered the joke, the way the crowd reacted, it reportedly turned into one of those moments comedians never forget. The audience erupted. People were laughing so hard they could barely breathe. And in comedy, moments like that can shift power in a room instantly. Because when the crowd is on someone's side, there's nothing anyone else can do. Some insiders say that night was a turning point, not publicly, but behind the scenes. Because after that era, Steve Harvey slowly stepped away from stand-up comedy. His focus moved almost entirely to television, hosting, and business. Officially, Harvey said he simply evolved into bigger opportunities. And to be fair, that explanation makes sense. His career exploded after that. Family Feud, radio shows, motivational speaking. But here's where things get interesting. Years later, when Katt Williams appeared on a podcast interview that shook the internet, he didn't just talk about random industry gossip. He came prepared. He mentioned specific people, specific stories, specific timelines. And once again, Steve Harvey's name entered the conversation. That interview went viral almost instantly. Millions of people watched. Clips spread across social media like wildfire. But here's what caught the attention of people inside the comedy world. Katt Williams wasn't screaming or ranting. He was calm, calculated, organized, and that made his words feel more serious. Because when someone sounds confident and detailed while making accusations, people start asking questions. And that's where Dave Chappelle enters the story again. Years before the interview blew up online, Chappelle had already said something interesting about Katt Williams. It happened during a celebration of Black comedy legends. When Chappelle grabbed the microphone, he began praising several comedians. But when he mentioned Katt Williams, his tone changed. It wasn't casual praise. It sounded more like a statement. Chappelle described Katt as one of the most fearless comedians alive, someone who wasn't afraid of anyone, someone who spoke the truth even when it made powerful people uncomfortable. And as he spoke, the cameras scanned the audience, comedians laughing, nodding, reacting. But one face stood out: Steve Harvey. The smile was there, but the energy looked different. Some people watching the clip later said it looked like Harvey was trying to redirect the moment, turning the praise into a celebration of everyone instead of focusing on Katt Williams. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe it was just a normal reaction during a live show. But inside the comedy community, some insiders said the moment felt tense because Chappelle has a reputation for being extremely intentional with his words. He doesn't praise people randomly. He chooses his statements carefully. So when he highlighted Katt Williams in front of an entire room of comedy legends, people paid attention, and the timing became even more interesting years later, because when Katt Williams finally spoke openly in that viral interview, millions of viewers suddenly started revisiting old clips. They replayed the Detroit stories, they replayed Chappelle's speech, they replayed Harvey's reactions, and a new theory started circulating online. Maybe Steve Harvey isn't just uncomfortable around Katt Williams because of old jokes. Maybe it's because Katt knows things that haven't fully come out yet. In the entertainment industry, reputation is everything. One story can damage decades of success. One accusation can change how audiences see someone forever. And when someone like Katt Williams begins speaking confidently about behind-the-scenes behavior, people start wondering how much of it is true. But here's the twist that makes the story even more fascinating. Despite all the viral clips, interviews, and discussions, Steve Harvey has rarely addressed the details directly. He has spoken generally about negativity, he has dismissed certain accusations, but the deeper claims? Those conversations usually fade away without clear answers, and silence in Hollywood can sometimes be louder than any response. Because when someone strongly denies something, they usually provide receipts, evidence, explanations. But when the conversation simply disappears, speculation grows. Fans start digging into old footage, old interviews, old stories from comedians who were around during those years. And slowly, a picture begins to form, not necessarily proven, but definitely intriguing. Meanwhile, Dave Chappelle continues to stand in a unique position in the comedy world. He's respected, he's independent, and perhaps most importantly, he isn't afraid to walk away from the industry when he feels something isn't right. Remember, this is the same man who once walked away from a $50 million television deal because he felt the environment wasn't healthy. So when Chappelle speaks carefully about certain comedians, people tend to listen. And that's why his comments about Katt Williams still carry weight today. Because in a room full of legends, he singled out one person, not the biggest TV host, not the most famous face, but the comedian known for exposing uncomfortable truths, Katt Williams. And that brings us to the emotional side of the story. Comedy might look like fun from the outside, bright lights, big crowds, laughter echoing through theaters. But behind those curtains, the competition can be brutal. Careers are built on reputation, trust, respect. And when those things break, friendships can disappear overnight. Many comedians have spoken about how difficult the business can be emotionally. You travel constantly, you perform in front of strangers every night, and your peers are also your competition. Sometimes the same people you laugh with backstage are the same people you're battling for opportunities. That kind of environment can create tension that lasts for years, sometimes decades. For Katt Williams, speaking openly about industry behavior has made him both admired and controversial. Some fans see him as a truth teller, others believe he simply enjoys stirring drama. But one thing is undeniable: whenever he speaks, people listen. And when his words involve powerful figures like Steve Harvey, the entire entertainment world starts watching. For Steve Harvey, the situation is complicated. He has built one of the most successful careers in entertainment history. Millions of families watch him every day. His brand is built around positivity, faith, and motivational messages. That image is powerful.
Why are you on my material?
Right.
You know, what's that about? You know, and then, people want to jump up. Oh, he didn't know, he didn't steal your... So yes, he did.
But when old controversies resurface, they challenge the public perception that took decades to build. And that's why the tension between these comedians fascinates so many people. Because it's not just about jokes anymore. It's about legacy. It's about credibility. And it's about who controls the narrative of what really happened behind the scenes. In the end, the truth may never be fully revealed. Hollywood has a way of protecting its biggest names. Stories fade, new scandals appear, public attention moves on. But certain moments stay frozen in time, like that room full of comedians, like Dave Chappelle standing at the microphone, and like the camera briefly capturing Steve Harvey's reaction, and like the name that continues to echo through the conversation: Katt Williams. Maybe the tension is exaggerated. Maybe it's just another internet theory. Or maybe, just maybe, there are stories that haven't been fully told yet. Stories that only a few people in that room truly understand. And if those stories ever come out completely, the comedy world might look very different. Until then, the mystery remains. And sometimes in Hollywood, the unanswered questions are far more powerful than the answers.